Well, as is often said, all good things come to an end, and with Star Trek The Undiscovered Country, that's pretty much it for the original cast, their final adventure. Of course, there would be guest appearances and stuff like that with the Next Generation, but for all intents and purposes, this was it. And it's a good ending on it after some stumbles with the film series that they had towards the end there. As much as I liked Star Trek IV, it's a bit of a departure from the style and themes of the initial films, even though the Search for Spock pretty much ends the story. The voyage home is just a means by which, hey, how did they escape going to prison or living for the rest of their lives in exile on Vulcan? Well, they gave you a story as to how that happened. And to be fair to it, comedic episodes in classic Star Trek happened quite a bit. So something like this was not beyond the pale or a stretch or anything. Then, of course, Star Trek V, which had the plot elements of something that's closer to an actual Star Trek episode than any of them, probably even more so than the motion picture. The motion picture is the most sci-fi of the films. But Final Frontier, that is a plot for a Star Trek episode that would have happened. But all kinds of things running against it, and it's not all William Shatner's fault. And obviously they didn't give him any money for it and that sort of thing. So after that, they said, hey, let's give it a good send-off and wrap it up as we move forward with a new cast and new version of Star Trek. And, they thought about the fans of this and thought, yeah, we need to make nice with them. See, they used to think about things like that. So they reunited the band, and so Undiscovered Country, in a lot of ways, fits in with the tone that and style, if you will, that Wrath of Khan established. And so, of course, it's a sci-fi political thriller in it. That holds to the idea that the Klingons could represent the Soviet Union and the federations of the United States. The plot opens up with the destruction of their moon that they were mining for, I suspect, lithium or what have you, I forget. And they were cutting corners and casting caution aside, and, well, the whole damn thing exploded. And as a result, their home planet of Kronos is now in dire straits, and this could unravel the Empire and cause all kinds of problems. So this is, their take on what happened with Chernobyl, which was the nuclear power plant in the Soviet Union as they had a meltdown, and it's just one of those things. So the whole thing was collapsing onto itself, and how to handle this. And there was at the time there was fears of a Russian civil war and stuff like that, and how this could go badly for everybody else instead of just sitting on the sidelines and watching them collapse into ruin. So in this case with the Klingons, Spock decides to offer the olive branch and negotiate deals with them. And since they're in dire need, says, hey, we can offer all kinds of help and aid and whatnot, but we got to come to some peace agreement terms and end our hostile nature of the galactic Cold War that existed between the two. And so it's one of these things that's bringing a narrative that hung over Star Trek for quite a while. There were others, of course, the Romulans and whatnot, but with the Klingons, they tended to be the main adversaries that they went up against throughout the show and in the film series, which never really came to a head until Search for Spock, where you actually had a battle between the crew and the Klingons. But so after all of that, this happens, and so that's the play out. This happened again in the show, most notably the episode that's clearly about Vietnam and all that sort of stuff. And that's the kind of thing that they would play out through these narratives, and did it well. So it's not out of place or anything like that. So, but the interesting thing is the conflict within the characters themselves. So you have, they're coming to the end of their career, probably wanting to just reflect on the good old days and stuff. And, oh man, everything comes to an end and whatnot. Now this falls in Kirk's lap because Spock just decided on his own initiative, to do this. And Kirk's very upset and feels betrayed, especially, because of his own situation. His son was murdered by them. He's always had an adversarial road towards the Klingons. He doesn't trust them and all this sort of thing because they've been at odds for so very long. And it speaks to the Kirk's humanity in this, that you have to look at your own flaws and whatnot and try to grow. And through the events of this story, that's what happens for him. Yes, a Klingon killed your son, but not the entirety of the Klingon people did. And so it's actually quite a good exploration of Kirk in this story. And then, of course, Kirk and Spock being at odds after everything they'd been through, and he goes and he saves Spock and brings him back. He feels quite betrayed and hurt by what Spock's doing. And even Spock comes to realize that, he should have took Kirk. It consulted him about all this, said, look, and plead his case to him. So I think this is what we do. And the line in it that only Nixon could go to China is the purpose of why he thinks Kirk is the best guy to lead this diplomatic mission. And of course, it's like back in those days of Nixon wanting to open up China, the idea that Nixon had rose to prominence over his anti-communism stance and whatnot, that he would be the guy that people would trust to go and make a deal with a communist state. So the idea no one could question Kirk's Cold Warrior status against the Klingons. So it all plays out. This does play out, and as since then, I think there's quite a realization that a lot of people were very upset that the status quo came to an end. Their whole lives are built on it, and what do we do? This is our bread and butter. Hey, I won't name names or departments or whatnot, but So this is what's playing out within the Federation, and of course the Klingons. They don't want a peace deal; they want the war to continue, and only one can win. So they actually had this unholy alliance to stop the peace deal. So you get David Warner as this, he's the Chancellor actually, but he's seeking the deal. And, he gets assassinated, and Kirk is framed for it. The Enterprise is, and all this. Kirk and Bones beam over to the Klingon ship, try to save the guy. They can't. And there's all this business of the assassination. It plays off. The assassin is mysterious. They're in these suits you can't see. They knock out the gravity of the ship, and they use magnetic boots to go commit the murder. And it's either that for whatever reason, the phasers don't disintegrate as much anymore. They do disintegrate. We do see a pot in a kitchen get disintegrated. But for the Klingons, it puts a hole through them, and and a lot of Pepto-Bismol comes floating out. But anyway, that's what they do. They kill them, and so then it becomes this sort of Agatha Christie type mystery of trying to figure out who the killers were on the ship. They do, but they're killed by the real leader, which turns out to be Saavik. Oh, no, wait, it's not Saavik. It's a new Vulcan lady played by Kim Cattrall. Now, it was supposed to be Saavik, and I think that's a mistake that it wasn't. Now, Gene Roddenberry didn't want it because she was seen as a heroic character in the initial films, and didn't like that. But for the credibility and narratives, and plus since she was there when David was murdered, And also, she's half Romulan, so she's got an edge to her. And so I think it was more believable that she might side with the guys thinking the Klingons are nasty, rotten people and we can't trust them and all this stuff. And war's the only thing they understand. And you know, the death of David hit her as well. And stuff like that, you know, and it would have been more, it's more to the point of how devastated Spock is that his protege, you know, betrayed him like this, and ends up putting Kirk at risk and all that. The Kirk getting arrested by the Klingons in the trial, it's sort of like this culmination of everything, you know, and then the Klingons like, we've been after this bastard for so long. And so it's all good. The prison planet scenes are fine. David Bowie's wife shows up, makes out with Kirk, of course. The shapeshifter. Don't know if anyone's ever suggested any later that could she have been a member of the Dominion? I guess we'll never know. She gets disintegrated. The Klingons don't mess around. But here there's comical scenes that work, and it's kind of like Kirk is fighting with the shapeshifter because she's sent there to kill them and all this stuff. But she turns into him. She looks just like him. She says, I can't believe I kissed you. And she said, it must have been your lifelong dream, which, see, that's good. The other stuff, they go too far with silliness, and it gets in the way, and it's to the detriment of the film. The kitchen scene. Well, first of all, there shouldn't have been a kitchen. There's replicators and everything. But, of course, once again, playing on the nautical themes that were certainly present in Wrath of Khan, but here it goes too far where, oh, look, it's the kitchen for the, you know, a lot of stuff. And then the cabins and whatnot. Kirk's cabin is very small now. It doesn't really make all. Of course, it's a new ship. It's not the same one, but still. But that whole thing of them investigating it to displace is using a phaser. So Valeris fires on the pot and disintegrates it because an alarm goes off when you use the phaser at full force. So apparently this later comes up in how she murders the actual assassins by hitting them with stun, but right up against the temple, so it kills them. But the alarm doesn't work for that. But the point of it is, the flaw in the scene of her revealing this to them all in the investigation is Chekhov doesn't know this. How could he not know that? Yeah. That just doesn't work. So the whole kitchen scene should have thought of something else and just not have it. And then they screw with Chekhov again when they find one of the magnetic boots as their search for the assassins. And it's this guy, it's in his locker. And then they call him in, and Chekhov goes, gotcha. And then they all like, Chekhov, and he looks down. The guy's barefoot because his feet are these weird alien feet. Apparently he can't wear boots or shoes or anything. Chekhov doesn't know this. I mean, is he a rare species he's never encountered before, you know, living his whole life in outer space, meeting God knows how many aliens and whatnot. It's just done to be silly, and it's not very good. Yeah, you shouldn't do that. But they did, so there you go. So anyway, the whole thing, the Klingons didn't bother to do any scanning or strip search of Kirk as Spock left a little transmitter beacon on his shoulder. And so that's how they're able to rescue him from the prison planet and beam him out. Because Klingons just don't believe in patting down or strip searching. Or at the very least, taking their uniforms away and putting them in some sort of, you know, prison jumpsuit or what have you. Well, what are you going to do? So, yeah. And then, of course, the big battle. How did they frame the Enterprise? Well, they had a bird of prey that could shoot while cloaked. So there you go, a brand new weapon. And so now they got to rush to the scene to save the peace talks from yet another assassination. And Chang, played by Christopher Plummer, who does a good job, attacks with the invisible ship. And then Sulu shows up in Excelsior, and so they can both get shot at. But meanwhile, of course, the Enterprise comes up with a photon torpedo that can track the tailpipe exhaust of the bird of prey, and one shot's all it takes, because it is a scout class ship, so it's not on par with the heavy cruisers of Enterprise and Excelsior, and it's done. They're dead. That's it for Chang, and that's the way he wanted to go anyway. And so then Kirk goes down, and they save everybody from the assassination, and there you go. And then they get the word they're to be decommissioned, and they didn't like that, so they fly off into the sunset and are never seen or heard from again. No, they just fly around, and they bring the ship back and get decommissioned. Yeah. Sulu being in command of Excelsior is something that should have happened all the way back in Wrath of Khan. As I suggested, it should have been him in command of the Reliant, and Chekhov as his first officer. Chekhov should have been on Excelsior with him too, but I guess they needed extra character for these scenes as they investigated the assassination and all that. But yeah, so it's clearly setting up the era that is demonstrated by Next Generation, which had already been underway by the time this film came out. And, of course, Michael Dorn playing Worf's grandfather, being their defense attorney in the trial. Little touches like that. And so there you are. The end of the original crew's adventures on the way out. And, as send-offs go, it's not bad. It's got its flaws. It stumbles here and there. But it was an attempt to recapture what they'd established with Wrath of Khan. And, of course, could have been better, but it worked out. Sadly, James Horner did not return to score it. I wish he could have. I kind of wish they had it where, Goldsmith and Horner took turns every other film. The music is fine. It takes quite a bit from Mars, Bringer of War, theme song, from the planets. But a lot of people borrow from that one. Certainly Star Wars did. But it would have been cool if James Horner could have scored that one as well. But it didn't happen. So that's too bad. It's still better music than what Star Trek 4 had, which just wasn't very good at. Of all the Star Trek films, that one's probably the weakest musically anyway. Nothing against Roseman, but it just didn't fit, I didn't think, especially with the great music that was established by Goldsmith and Horner. So anyway, that's about all there is. Yes, the Kirk, Spock, and Scotty, even Bones show up later on, but especially Kirk's outing. Boy, would have wished that could have been better, but we'll get there. But after this, it's on to the Next Generation, and I'll delve into that going forward with rewatching Star Trek.